Hi, everybody. This is Gaynor Meilke with Moving the Needle, where we're talking about digital transformation in the accounting channel. And today, my co-host, John Higgins, is out doing just that. He's doing some education. So he's not with us, but I have been super excited for this conversation with Luke Fry, the new accountant in resident at Canopy, and in fact, the first ever accountant in residence. I don't know of another company that has one actually. So congratulations, Luke. And do you want to intro yourself for people who don't know you already?
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks, Gaynor. Yeah, my role at Canopy is really just to be a subject matter expert. And since I was the first accountant at bench accounting and helped scale that to a few thousand clients, and then I scaled my own tax practice to about $500,000 of recurring revenue. And then I spent a little bit of time at some of the AI native general ledgers like Puzzle, and then spent some time at Pilot. I've kind of seen every way that people have approached solving accounting, both inside a firm and outside a firm. So it's just my honor to be able to be at Canopy, which is such a great practice management platform with tons of traction, and it's been around for a while, to help just bring a little bit more authority and context to the marketing team.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you've been doing, even like in your first few months, has been amazing. You've really been out there. So if anybody's not following Luke on LinkedIn and other social platforms, you'll want to do that so you can see all of the places that he goes and kind of you're bringing a lot of accounting innovation to the profession and to professionals in their firm kind of through the work that you're doing. So, tell me a little bit about that and like how you're approaching this because having been a, practicing accountant and then also like being kind of around on the tech scene for a while. Like
Mhm.
you probably got like I know you've got a really interesting perspective.
Absolutely. Well, my mission is really just to make accounting easier for everyone. I was a reluctant accounting grad, combination of economic forces when I graduated, and then also a natural ability to do accounting basically forced me into accounting. And then I grew to love accounting in a lot of different ways. But the reality is, I love talking about accounting. I love talking about tech. I love talking about growth and innovation. But there's still a lot of grunt work in accounting that makes me not love it. And there's never been a better time in the world to be an accountant from a sense of the amount of innovation, automation, technology that can take away some of that grunt work, which makes it a lot more appealing now and is especially important with the talent gap, right? So there's more need for accountants than there are accountants. So if you run an accounting practice, it is one of the most surefire investments from an ROI point of view if you can figure out staffing and just execution. And I think a lot of that comes through technology and efficiency.
Mhm. But I want to just turn back to something that you just said there is, because something that I espouse to a lot of firms too is that you're running an accounting practice or an accounting business. And I think that's a shift that a lot of firm leaders need to make is thinking of themselves more as the business owner and running the business as opposed to
Mhm.
just doing the work, which they love. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's not going to help you scale if you spend all day just doing work. You've got to be able to scale that with the talent and the team and the tech. So, I mean, do you have
Mhm.
any advice there for people who are
Sure.
trying to make that shift?
Yeah, I think and talk about this a lot, and I attribute much of my way of thinking to the E-Myth, Michael Gerber. There's an accounting version one, I believe Darren Root as well. But the point is, if you're the most technically competent person in your firm on tax or accounting or service delivery, you're probably not going to be able to scale very far and probably not going to be able to scale past your capacity. And that's probably one of the most likely or common things I see with accounting practice owners is they love the client relationships, they love the technical competence and being the smartest person when it comes to doing tax stuff, but that doesn't allow them the business to grow beyond their capacity. So if you're having trouble getting past $1 or $2 million in revenue, and you have a team and everyone is coming to you for help and support, that probably means you're building an unscalable practice. Maybe that's what you want, and that could be perfectly fine. But if you're wanting to grow into a larger practice, figuring out how to not be the person that everyone goes to all the time, which is a good feeling, but it was not a setup for long-term scalability.
Right. So you kind of have to leave your ego at the door and not be the smartest accountant in your firm necessarily, but the most strategic one.
Exactly. How are you allocating resources, whether that is hiring in the US, offshoring, leveraging tech and AI, utilizing training modules. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Uh, Probably true of any tech. There's a lot of software that we purchase but aren't fully taking advantage of.
Hmm. Yeah, and I loved your example. We talked about this before we started recording of, not having to double pay for, things. And, part of being able to scale is also cost efficiency as well as the workflow efficiency. So, to kind of bring it into what Canopy's doing in the accounting channel, I think that's one of the magic bullets is having an all-in-one system that you don't have to double pay on all of these different apps.
Certainly, in my consulting work, I always recommend that people are recording their calls using a CRM and using subscription billing. Well, that used to be three separate apps.
Mm.
And now with Canopy, and only since I started in the last few months, have they released some of these other features to automatically record a call. Yeah, I think that's one of the most novel and highest leverage things you can do is be recording calls with clients to check for scope creep, to help delegate tasks and work. And now in Canopy, it's directly tied to the client record. So you don't even have to have this separate siloed system. You're copying and pasting. There's additional security risk. There's just so much of a strategic advantage to an all-in-one practice management.
And I also, we'd made an announcement or we helped Canopy with the announcement on Coworker. And so, that's really innovative as well. And I'm a big proponent of keeping your AI within the tech that it was made for,
Mhm.
so that we're not spreading that risk and having issues with data being out there outside your firm. So tell me a little bit about Coworker and all of the tools. I mean, Canopy has literally released so many tools in the past year. It's almost like it's so expansive. How do you think that firms can kind of take it from top level looking at practice management down to like utilizing something like Coworker?
Absolutely. I mean, AI is a topic we've all probably grown tired of even hearing about. The reality is, whether you agree or disagree with it, it's here. It's just like the internet or gasoline. For now, it's all here. And so choosing to be intentional with how you use and set it up is going to be really important. Your staff is probably using it, whether you know it or not. So far better to set up a policy and as a component of that, if you're using industry-specific tools like a practice management system like Canopy, we've gone to the effort of building out AI directly in the app. Now, what does that help with? It helps with security. That's probably the biggest, most important thing we are thinking about when it comes to utilizing AI. How can I make sure it's not taking my data, my client's data, and putting it into some sort of model to be trained on? We're not doing any of that. And as you alluded to, Canopy is so expansive. I know many firms who've been on it for years and aren't even leveraging features that were out a year ago. So, what's really cool with AI and what we're calling coworker within Canopy, you can actually just ask it, hey, I'm new here, or I haven't used AI before, or I'm just getting back into really making sure I'm using Canopy. Where should I look? And the AI will actually just walk you through it like a custom onboarding plan.
And I think that's so important for firm leaders and practitioners to empower themselves. Like it's kind of, I like to think of it as this is just a new kind of, we all got used to Google and asking for things, but here it's so much more powerful because you can ask and not just get an answer, but you can actually line it up with action. So, there's all kinds of things that you could build within Canopy to make things so much easier from, things that were there pre-AI even as well. I know we work with a lot of firms that, will kind of do a bit of a tech check with them, and they're not even aware that they can integrate tax software with Canopy. So like it's very like basic. You could even ask, I'm sure, coworker, I'm using these other solutions. Which ones can work with Canopy and which ones do I not need anymore? Like that would be an excellent question to ask coworker for sure.
Absolutely. And we're moving beyond what we've grown so used to in just the chat agent, right? The chat bot is helpful and constructive in many ways, but with Coworker and just the agents in general, it's a tool, or you could think of it as an intern who can actually execute on some baseline tasks, whether that's creating reports, reminding you of things, or actually scheduling emails that you approve. And in Canopy, we've really set those permissions up, which aligned very nicely with the news from the IRS recently about AI practice management or AI principles, and making sure that the practitioner is reviewing things before we're sending them out.
Yeah. And I know that's part of the updates that firms need to make in a WISP. So if they have the written information security plan, which every firm needs, I think, regardless of whether they're doing tax or not. You said, at the beginning about policies, we're all about that here because there's so much more risk with just the open nature of these tools. And, as you said as well, like your staff are probably using AI and you need to manage that in your firm so that people are not throwing client spreadsheets into Chat GPT to, get a quick solution. They need to be
Mhm.
doing so within a container that's meant for that purpose and keeps everything safe within the walls of your firm, just like you wouldn't, give your client files to a third party without having like a NDA or some kind of thing. You've got to make sure that you lock those things down. And I think it's also helpful, and you could speak to this, Luke, really well, is if you have a new employee who's joining your team, so much easier to bring them into Canopy and show them the ropes, right? It's like right there for them.
Absolutely. We have a fantastic Canopy University to work through. It's several hours of content, and we have made so many new product releases since that's been fully baked, and it's going to be constantly updated. But very easily and quickly, you could log in either as an admin or manager of someone who's just starting out and get them a list of things that they need to do. You can even review their usage. How much are they leveraging the AI tools within Canopy? And it really begins to be a true coworker, a collaborator to be able to execute on work.
Yeah, I mean it really is amazing, and I work closely with Canopy, so I maybe have a bit of a biased view, but I just think that there's so much benefit to firms to really consider an all-in-one solution because of the security, I think the synchronicity as well. You're not having to patchwork things together. And I think that's another thing I see some firms trying to do is to use open AI tools to do work that shouldn't be out in the open. And also, why try to build something yourself when you can get something that's being built for accounting firms by people who are totally invested in the future of accounting. And to that point, Luke, like where do you see the future of
Mm.
accounting going?
I mean, thankfully for people like me, I think it's just going to be more and more human. Certainly, there is anxiety over computers replacing us, right? But my hope and what I want to be part of building is this reality of let's help it replace the really redundant or low value work. Something we've been talking about for 15 or 20 years with the advent of cloud accounting. Let's just keep going down that journey to be more human, to be a real advisor, to give people strategic advice as opposed to here your filings done, your financials are done.
Mhm. So when you think about how long it's really taken for people to embrace the cloud
Mm.
and compare it to, it seems like a arms race of like AI
Mhm.
right now. Like, how do you think people should navigate the usage of AI? Like, I don't think that you can wait 10 years. Like, if you waited 10 years with AI, like you're not gonna have a business anymore. How do you think about that?
Right. I mean, it's really hard for me to say for sure whether someone won't have a business in 10 years because my guess, not to add more fear to the fire, but my guess is there is going to be some sort of a big leak with an AI tool.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to probably hurt a firm that is an early adopter. And that's why it's super important to work with well-established companies with good security protocols, with good containers in place, like Canopy, as opposed to trying to add that patchwork together through integrations and MCPs, which are exciting but expose more risk. Um, I probably didn't think there would be any company still on QuickBooks Desktop in 2026. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm being an early adopter, I always surprised by people who wait. But I think you're right. Waiting until everything is perfectly safe is probably not going to be a good strategic move. At least if you're trying to grow and really innovate with your practice and your clients.
Yeah. And I think that's where looking at some technology vendors as true partners in your business, which I think Canopy does with firms. I mean, with all the tools, the resources, the real people who are there like every day building it, like that's an important resource for firms as well because you know, a whole business is being built around all of these AI solutions and software. And as you said, you want the kind of long-standing, like people who've been there like pre-AI and really have a good grounding on what's happening in an accounting firm or it's going to, definitely be a more beneficial partner than ChatGPT is not going to bail you out when you like have a data leak. And we've already seen that with, there's
Hmm.
been some legal cases of, firms whose payroll data has been leaked out because somebody put a spreadsheet into ChatGPT. So definitely, I'm sure as you move around the accounting profession, as the accountant in residence at Canopy, these are all things that you'll be talking about. So what is your next move? I know you're going to be kind of going to several conferences, and then you're hosting the Canopy podcast. And what
Hmm.
else are you going to be cooking up at Canopy?
Yes, June was a pretty great travel month, and so I'm excited to kind of chill a little bit for going on the road. And as you mentioned, we're gearing up to start releasing some new podcasts from the Canopy Practice Success podcast. So if you're listening to this and have a good point of view, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have you on and talk more about your firm or your services and how you see the accounting industry evolving.
Awesome. So I'll ask you one last question. If you were going to give us, the top three things that you would be looking at as a firm owner to really move the needle, like for the rest of 2026 and into
Mhm.
2027, what would you be focusing on?
Certainly, if you don't have a practice management system, get one. I obviously think you should get Canopy, but there's other contenders out
Mhm.
there. If you do tax, you should be evaluating very seriously the AI tax prep tools. And if you're still billing by the hour, it's probably time to get over that. If you look at the IRS guidance over the use of AI, the IRS is actually mandating that you can't bill for hours you didn't work, which seems
Oh,
reasonable, but we also don't know how much the AI is actually going to cost in certain situations today or tomorrow. And so the sooner you get to value-based billing or subscription-based billing, the better and more aligned you're going to be with evolving and implementing new tech.
mm. I think that's a really interesting point that the IRS is making there. I mean, wow. If there's never been a better impetus to go to value billing, like that is it for sure.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, this was a great conversation, Luke, and honestly, like we barely scratched the surface. So hopefully you'll come back frequently and give us, your take on the accounting profession and AI and all the things in it. So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate you coming on. And if you haven't checked out Canopy, we go to getcanopy.com and follow Luke on all the socials. And if you have any questions, we can definitely connect you with Luke. And we'll look forward to next time that we can have a conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Gaynor.
You're welcome. Thanks, Luke.